Hey, everybody, welcome to this week's Better Way Thursday workshop. We're excited to have you join us. I am here with Madison Reiser, who is a strengths coach, and we're going to be talking about strengths today and how understanding our own strengths, talents, gifts, natural abilities helps us be more successful at work and in all our professional pathways and all our personal pathways as well. I'm sure I'm a strengths coach as well, Jean. I got certified maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, and learning about the Gallup, CliftonStrengths, and lots of other assessment tools has really helped me in my own professional career. And I'm super excited to have you here today, talking us through some of the things. I know you've got a presentation, and you're going to tell us about yourself. So I'm not going to do any like intro or bio or anything like that. I'm just going to let you take it away. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I did not know you were also a certified strengths coach. So, yay. You will see, I'm very enthusiastic about Clifton Strengths, although in this workshop today, we're going to talk more generally. And so that's a good place to start just with that disclaimer is that I do speak the language of strengths and Clifton strengths. So you'll see here, I have my top 5 strengths and as part of my introduction slide. If you've never taken the assessment, that will mean nothing to you, and that's okay. If you have taken the assessment, maybe you can pull it up. Maybe you can look at your top 5 as we go through this. But just know if I'm speaking in a language that's like strengths, Gallup, Clifton, all of those sorts of things, everything I say still applies to just thinking about the way you most naturally think, feel, and behave. So you don't necessarily need the assessment, but if you're interested, it's really fun. It's a really great resource moving forward. So this is our Play to Your Strengths workshop, and I'm going to do a little bit of introduction, but the first thing I want to do, I always like to do a little bit of a grounding in the beginning because I have worked remote since 2015, and I am fully aware of what happens when you get on a virtual presentation and you start thinking about all the things that you need to do and you're looking at your phone and the ideas and like, I know, I'm very familiar with this. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to give you a couple of activities to do, things to reflect on, questions to answer. Whenever I do that, I'm just going to prompt you to pause the video, do the thing, come on back. So for the grounding, I'm going to encourage you to pause the video and just set a timer for 2 minutes and just brain dump everything that's on your mind right now. All the tasks you have coming up, all of the, oh, I need to go and do that. Oh, I should look that up while I'm on my computer. Just take a second and get it all out of your head in whatever way works best for you, especially because I know we're talking mostly to tech moms here. There's a lot of things happening. So go ahead and pause the video. And once you're back, you can keep this note next to you, add to it as ideas and thoughts and reminders come up for you, knowing that you can go back to them at the end of this 45 minutes or so and address all of those then, because I want you to get the most out of your time here. I'm very grateful for the time. I'm very appreciative of anyone who's watching who's saying, I'm going to dedicate some time to learning about my strengths, and I just want to make sure you're present. So my goal for you today in our session is, and I am going to introduce myself and go through the whole story, don't you worry, but I just like to start us here. I want you to walk away understanding why knowing and leaning into your strengths is a game changer for your life, your career, your relationships. I want you to walk away having built some curiosity around your strengths, Clifton strengths or otherwise. And I want you to walk away with a desire to lean into those strengths, amplify them, rather than having this constant voice in our head that's like, well, I have to improve my weaknesses. I have to do better at this. And we're going to talk a lot about that. So for the workshop, you're going to need a pen and a piece of paper. And yes, you do actually have to handwrite something at some point. So it can be, if you have your Remarkable tablet, you can do that too, or whatever it is, but it does need to be something you can handwrite with. And then a stopwatch of some sort. So that can be on your computer, phone, etc. Cool. All right, before we dive into all of our fun activities, I want to tell you a little bit of my story with strengths. As I mentioned, I'm a very enthusiastic Clifton Strengths coach because it has made a very big difference in my life. So Way back in 2016, I took the StrengthsFinder assessment, now CliftonStrengths Assessment, for the first time when I was the new member of a recruitment team for an education nonprofit. I worked at that organization for about 7.5 years. So this was kind of on the beginning end of that for me. I was just a regional recruiter. I was covering an entire territory. We did this as a team. I was so into it. I was very fascinated by all of the information that I learned, but I didn't really do a whole lot with it at that point. We did the whole presentation, we did the whole group thing, and then I personally was interested in it, but that was kind of the end of the conversation. Fast forward to 2019, I became the director of that recruitment team. I was very young. I was very inexperienced when it came to management, in very typical, that's maybe not kind. In a somewhat common experience at nonprofits, there was very little budget, very little support, very little training, very high expectations. And so I really took this as an opportunity to learn more about strengths because I was like, I don't know what to do here. This feels like a good place to start. And it was. And while I was not certified at the time, I did my best with the information that Gallup provided, which is a lot. Fast forward to 2020, we all know what happened. Leading an already virtual team of extroverts who love to be around people, this became a very challenging year. And so I really personally started to experience a lot of burnout as I was carrying the experience and the trauma and the burnout of 7 other people, continuing to show up every day saying, okay, and about our goals as the world is crumbling. As I navigated that burnout, I really got to this place where I was like, I don't feel like I'm good at my job anymore. I had excelled. I had been excellent. And all of a sudden I was like, I can't do anything. I can't do anything right. Everything I'm doing seems to be wrong. We got a new leader in place who was really restructuring everything. And I just I couldn't perform. And I just couldn't understand how I had done so well up until this point, and now all of a sudden it was all falling apart. In 2021, as the burnout became like physically taxing on me, I really had to make this decision of, do I continue on this path of burnout, find another role in a nonprofit, probably continue to be not burnt out because I wasn't in a place to recover, or make a different choice. And in that space, I was mercifully connected with a strengths coach, and I started working with her. And it really brought this clarity to me that it wasn't that I was bad at my job. It wasn't that my strengths were useless in a business environment, which is something that I believed at the time. What I came to realize was that prior to this new leader and this restructuring, I had 2 colleagues who we worked as a very, very tight little triangle. And whatever I wasn't good at, one of the other 2 was. And so instead of having really strict roles, we had, I'm good at this, you're good at this, you're good at this, let's survive. And we actually thrived. And 2020 was the first year in the 10-year organization history that we actually hit recruitment goals. And then we brought in a new leader and it all kind of fell apart, which was just so sad. But working with the strengths coach really helped me to realize that I had done so well in that previous environment because I had some people to complement my strengths. I could really lean into the things I was good at, and someone else could pick up the slack elsewhere. In the restructuring, I was now responsible for A to Z, and I was really only really good at like A through F, and everything else was just not, it was just not good. I was not good at it. So I ultimately decided to leave that role. I didn't see a lot of things changing. I knew I wasn't going to recover from burnout in the environment that I created it. And so I did decide to leave. I started my own business coaching. 2022, I finally became certified in Clifton Strengths. And I've now started implementing that not only in my one-on-one coaching, but in my team, my work with leaders and teams. 2023, at the end of the year, I became a mom for the first time, and therefore 2024 was a very interesting experience of navigating how do I raise a human and raise a business and make those things work together. I'm happy to say this year I'm feeling very good about that. But it was a longer road than I anticipated. Strengths have been a huge part of that. And now I'm just really enjoying helping people, individuals, leaders, and teams learn about their strengths, how to embrace them, how to systematize them, just so that we can all live a little bit easier life. And that's really my goal, is living in an easier, more aligned life. So that's my story, a little bit longer than I would normally do, but I just want to share the importance of why I feel so strongly about this particular body of work, because I've seen the impacts personally and professionally. Okay, the key to success is to fully understand how to apply your greatest talents and strengths in your everyday life. I believe this very strongly. I've seen it in action. So before we hit our activities, I want to share just some data that comes from Gallup and from CliftonStrengths. Again, if you haven't taken the assessment, that's okay. This data is still relevant to you. But I think it really hits home and it shares a little bit about why it's so important to identify and lean into your talents. So Gallup has done a lot of research. They have a lot of data points. And what they have found is that people who focus on using their strengths in work, in life, in relationships, they specifically focus on work, but I expand that in my work, are 3 times as likely to report having an excellent quality of life and are 6 times as likely to be engaged in their jobs. I think those are very significant numbers, especially with just all the things that have been going on in the world for the last many, many years. To report having an excellent quality of life, I would say, is a big win. So this is why we talk about strengths. This is why we talk about leaning into them. People working, and I would say living in their strengths zone, look forward to going to work more. They have more positive than negative interactions with coworkers. They treat customers better if that's the line of work that you're in. They tell their friends that they work for a great company. I think that one is so interesting, and we can chat about that. But and then they achieve more on a daily basis, which I know many of us are very interested in. How do we do more? How are we more productive? How do I achieve more? And ultimately have more positive, creative, and innovative moments. This is when you are embracing your strengths. This is when you are in an environment that really cultivates that, allows you to lean into that, allows you to recognize it and take action according to your strengths. And so as we move forward and you're thinking about what is it that I'm really good at? What is it that I bring to the table? The goal is to find ways to do that more. The more that you can do the things that you're good at, the better. Of course, we're always going to, and this is where this next slide comes in. I know we're always going to ask, how do I improve my weaknesses? I will be honest, working in recruitment for a long time, working in hiring, my least favorite question is, talk to me about your weaknesses. Because I don't care. I mean, I do, but I don't care about your weaknesses. I care about your strengths because I see much more potential in you in answering that question. I see much more of ways that you can fit into a team and ways that you can do your best work by looking at your strengths. So I'm sure, moment of honesty, some of us here are thinking, okay, great. But like, when do we talk about how to improve the weaknesses? And the answer is we're not going to talk about that today. So I'm really sorry if that's why you came, but that's not why we're here. Before I really dive into answering this question and talking more about how we actually lean into our strengths, I want us to do a quick activity to kind of illustrate why we focus on strengths. So I want you to grab your pen and paper right now. This is going to be one of those times I tell you to pause. You're going to use your timer. It's going to be fun, I promise. What I want you to do is I want you to take your pen and your paper, get your timer set up, and I'm going to have you write the following phrase 3 times. I use my strengths every day. And you're going to get your timer set, but don't go until you pause the video and say go. There's one thing I want you to hear before you pause the video though. The first time you're going to write this 3 times, I want you to write it with your non-dominant hand. So whatever hand, I'm right-handed, so I would be writing with my left hand. 3 times, I use my strengths every day. Time yourself, record the time. Go ahead and pause the video and do that. And now that we're back, I'm going to have you do this again. And this time, I want you to write it with your dominant hand. So I use my strengths every day, 3 times, dominant hand. Pause the video. Come on back. I want you to look at those 2 times. Normally, when I do this with people, it's about a minute and a half for the non-dominant hand, and about 20 to 40 seconds for the dominant hand. We do this activity because this is the best way. They did this in my training. I love this activity. I do it with everybody. This is such a good representation of why we lean into strengths. You could spend the rest of your life writing with your non-dominant hand. You could practice. You can only commit to writing with that hand. And you know what? You'd probably get better at it. It would probably be more legible than what just happened right now. And you might even get comfortable with it, right? Or you could save a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of frustration and just write with your dominant hand. That's how I feel about strengths. You can think about all the things you're not good at. If you've taken the assessment, you can look at the bottom of your report and you can say, I want to bring these to the top. I want to improve on these. I want to focus only on my weaknesses and improve them. Great. But if you're looking at, like, let's say a road and here's the middle and you're focusing on your weaknesses, you're really only going to get to here. But if you focus on your strengths, you get to start there and go forward. So keep this activity in mind when you're thinking about when you get pulled into that, I want to work on my weaknesses. I want to work on my weaknesses. This is the thing that you most naturally do. This is the way that you most naturally think, feel, and behave. The more you lean into that, the easier it is to move forward faster with less resistance, which is, again, what I'm here for. Let's make it easier. So I do want to share just a couple of things with you. Again, this is a little bit more CliftonStrengths language, but it's still relevant if you haven't taken the assessment. So writing with your dominant hand is like focusing on doing the things that you are most natural at, your most natural talents. In CliftonStrengths world, it's your top 10 strengths. Our goal here is to really focus on those most natural talents of yours, understand them, celebrate them, learn how to use and refine them. When I get asked about weaknesses, which is often, I love to refer to Gallup and CliftonStrengths definition of weakness, which is anything that gets in the way of your success. Oftentimes what I find in strengths coaching is that the things that get in the way of your success most often are your top strengths, are the things you're best at, because they're either you maybe aren't aware of them, they are maybe overfiring, and I'll give an example of that in a second, or you're not utilizing them enough. I always give the example of overfiring. When I was in leadership, I have ideation very high in my strengths. I love to brainstorm. I love to just come up with ideas. And my recruiters would come to me and they'd be like, I'm having trouble with getting people on a call. And I'd be like, great, you could try this. And I would walk away being like, oh, that was fun. And they would walk away thinking, oh crap, now I have 45 things I have to do. And so they'd keep coming back to me like, it's not working. I'm really overwhelmed. And I'm like, why are you so overwhelmed? I gave you like 45 things you could do. Just try one of them. And in working with a strengths coach, she was like, hey, you're the boss. When you say 45 things, they think they now have to do 45 things. And I was like, oh, that's not what I meant. And so that's just an example of where my ideation can overfire often. And so I really have to pay attention to, is this a place where people are asking for ideas? If so, have I clarified that I am not attached to these ideas? They can take them, they can leave them. I don't care. I'm just going to give you some thoughts. That has really changed my leadership, my coaching, just with that one tiny little thing of ideation being the thing that was getting in the way of my success and my team's success. So that's the biggest thing when we're thinking about weaknesses. You can still be actually managing your weaknesses by focusing on your strengths, because we're focusing on what's the thing that's getting in the way of success.
Jean, can I hop in here?
Yes, please.
I wanted to just present this idea that when you're saying we're not going to focus on our strengths, we're not going to, I mean, on our weaknesses, we're not going to focus on our weaknesses and get better at weaknesses and all those things. It doesn't mean that we ignore them, right? Or
Yeah,
pretend they don't exist or
correct.
in denial about them, right?
Yeah.
And I love the story that you told about the team members that you had that were synergizing so well in the early days at that nonprofit where you were working, because I know for myself, the way that I have managed my weaknesses is by bringing in people, partnering with people who have strengths where I have weakness. And so that's a way to mitigate the weakness, to work around it, to do
Mhm.
these different things. So instead of me focusing on, I've really got to get better at this thing, I don't, but I
Yeah.
need to make sure that that thing does get handled by somebody, right?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
kind of the same way that you look at this?
Absolutely. I kind of have two schools of thought. One is like, if you can bring in someone else to take over that, let's do that. That is the number one recommended, like easiest way to approach it. There are also situations where I know that you can't just bring someone else in, right? And maybe that's like in motherhood or in life. And yes, we can still bring in help and community and all of that, but I also really love to look at what are your strengths and how do you use them to get the same thing done? Because you can put 20 people in a room, give them all the same problem. They're all going to solve the problem. They're just going to do it in different ways. And that's the way that I look at strengths. Because, yes, there are situations where we bring people in and we create this really amazing, really strong group that covers all of the bases and takes some of the pressure off. And in teams and organizations, particularly, I love that. For a lot of the people I talk to and work with who are entrepreneurs, that's not always an option as much as we'd like it to be and as often as we'd like it to be. I've worked with a lot of people lately who don't have any executing strengths in their top 10. And basically, what that means is yeah, same, Robin, me too. I have one. And that is something that I see come up a lot of really being frustrated by, okay, no wonder I can't get anything done. I don't have any executing strengths. But what I've found and what has been really fun in working with clients is okay, you don't have any executing strengths. All that means is that you're not energized by getting things done. It doesn't mean you're incapable of getting things done. You just don't love it. You don't thrive on it. It's not the thing that like drives you. So, how do you get things done? And how do we lean into that? How do we maximize the strengths that you do have to help you get things done? How do we trick the system a little bit? An example using Clifton Strengths language, I had a client recently who had maybe one executing strength, but they had achiever, which you would think is an or competition. Sorry, they had competition, which you would kind of think is an executing strength, but it's not in Clifton Strengths world. And I was like, well, we're just going to use competition. Like, this is easy. How do you get things done? Compare yourself to other people in your industry. Like, tell someone else you want to get something done. Let's time each other, like whatever it is. And so there's always something in your strengths that you can look at to say, how can I use this to motivate me to get things done? If I'm not able to bring in that support, which obviously is the preferred, always the preferred option. But I'm glad that you asked that because literally my next slide is, there's nothing wrong with being aware of your weaknesses and managing them. But as I mentioned, like being able to lean into and recognize your strengths and develop those are the things that's going to move you further. And so that's what I want to spend the rest of our time together doing is giving you some tools that you can take, some activities. And I should have mentioned this in the beginning. A lot of this comes directly from Clifton Strengths. Some of the things I say are my experience in coaching, are my experience over the last several years, and the way that I see strengths show up. I try to be very clear about what's mine versus what is Clifton Strengths, but most of these slides are Clifton Strengths based. And these activities I've tweaked a little bit to not require the assessment, just heads up. So the rest of the time we're going to spend identifying some of your strengths and figuring out how to utilize them. If you have taken the assessment, this is a great time to pull that up and use it. If you have not, I have made all of these questions so that you don't have to have taken the assessment to do them. So the first thing I want you to do is just really reflect on your strengths. Let's pull up some of them. Let's think about what are your most natural talents? What are the ways that you show up? And so I want you to feel free to pause the video and answer these reflection questions with whatever comes up for you. Let me pause them here. All right, so are the questions that you were just reflecting on, of all the things you do well, what are 2 to 3 things that you do best? If you felt a little stuck on that, this could be in your life, in your work, in relationships. This could be things people have said about you, right? Maybe you don't fully believe it, but you've heard enough people say it that you're like, okay, I guess I must be good at this thing. I've had everything from, one of the things I say as an answer to this question is I really enjoy and am good at putting together IKEA furniture. It's very enjoyable for me. I don't know why. But that's a weird random thing about me that I'm good at. We can dissect that and dive into it if we want, but that can be your answer, right? It can be as simple as that. What, if any, factors distract you from completing tasks you're responsible for? This has been a very popular question in my strengths coaching recently, because I think a lot of us feel stretched. And so what's interesting is that sometimes the factors that distract you can be a really good indication of what your strengths actually are, because maybe you're not leaning into them, or maybe you need to shift things around in order to get the tasks done that you're responsible for. So another way to think about that question of what gets in the way is also, when you do complete tasks that you're responsible for with ease, why is that? Why was it easy for you to get those things done? And you can kind of compare the two and see, maybe one was where you were leaning a little bit more into your strengths. Using that competition example again, maybe you were in more of a competitive environment versus over here where you're really struggling to get things done. So looking at that question from kind of 2 angles can be really helpful. And then, what's the most important challenge that you're currently facing? And that can be a work project that you're working on. That can be something that just feels really heavy for you right now. It can be a challenge in a relationship. Whatever that is, it can also just be an opportunity that you have. It doesn't have, challenge kind of has a negative connotation. It doesn't necessarily have to be negative, but just the biggest thing that you're working on right now, thinking about what is the opportunity there. And so once you've kind of finished brainstorming there, we're going to go into this name it, claim it, aim it activity, which is one of Gallup's signature activities. And I'm just going to kind of skip through to the last slide, which has all of the questions on it, where we'll kind of dive into what you can do with your time. So name it, claim it, aim it. This is really an activity that's all about identifying what your strengths are. Again, if you haven't taken the assessment, using the questions we just answered is really helpful. Claiming it. How do you own this? How does this show up for you in your life, your work, your relationships? And how does it help you be successful? Or not? Where are the blind spots? Where have you overfired with it? Where is it getting in the way of your success? And then finally, aim it. How does this strength contribute to the things that you're doing? How does it contribute to the factors that keep you from completing your tasks, like we talked about in the reflection questions? And how can it help you in those areas? And so thinking about the question of the most important challenge that you're currently facing, how can you aim your strengths at that challenge, whether that's overcoming it or completing it, or however you've kind of phrased that. How do you aim your strengths to lean into them, to give them the most attention and energy so that you can get the best outcome? Curious, Robin, if you have anything you would add in here or questions before I move on.
I just I think, especially if for those who haven't taken the assessment, like coming up with a list of strengths. I love just a few more ideas of helping us understand even types of categories. Like what are some, I mean, I know a lot of clients you work with have done this assessment, so they've got this helpful list
Yeah.
ahead of us. But I even, some of the activities that I've done in the past, even helping people just think in different spheres of their life how to identify their
Yep.
strengths, or saying, when I've had great accomplishments, or when I've had people. I love what you said about what other people say about you. So maybe just a few more ideas of helping us try to identify the things that we do best. And maybe a lot of people really have self-knowledge, and they get, what are the three things you're great at? And they can answer it right away. But I
Yeah.
know there are a lot of people that don't have that. And so, I just love a few more ideas
Yeah,
of maybe a few brainstorming of different types of activities we could do to try to identify some of our strengths.
absolutely. So in another organization that I co-facilitated like a kind of professional development training with, we do an activity that's basically interviewing other people. And so it's just interviewing other people about yourself. How do you see me? What have been some of my biggest accomplishments in your mind? And it can be a really uncomfortable conversation, to be honest. But doing that, where you kind of have this list of questions of like, just how do you see me? Like, what do you see of me? How would you describe me to others? Um, how would you describe my accomplishments? It's interesting because if you do this with like a partner or a good friend versus a colleague, they're obviously going to have really different things to say. And what I love to do is just get some of these interviews and then just look at the themes, right? Because I imagine that what a friend or a partner says is still going to be in line with what a colleague says. It just might use different language. You can sit down and think about your schedule for the day. What do you do throughout the day? And if thinking about what am I good at or what am I bad at is like a little too positive, negative, especially if you are someone who deals with, negative self-talk and issues with confidence and things like that, it can be really hard to sit down and be like, I'm super good at XYZ. So maybe shift that language to what energizes me. When I look at my day, where is it that I feel the peaks? Where am I like, what do I look forward to each day? These are all questions you can ask that can kind of get at what are your most natural abilities? Because typically we like to do the things we're good at. That's a pretty common, a pretty safe bet is that you like to do the things you're good at. So for me, I would look at my day and I'd say, okay, I love when I get to sit down and brainstorm ideas about ways that I could run my business or build my business or, you know, write out a whole script for a podcast or something like that. I love doing those things. Now, if you ask me to record the podcast, if you ask me to, execute on the plan that I made, I don't want to do that. That does not sound like fun to me. Now, I've been in the strengths world for so long that my brain just works in that language, but it makes sense when I look at my Clifton strengths because I lead with strategic thinking. I love thinking strategically. I do not want to do any of the things that I think about strategically, though. If I'm being honest, I don't want to. It's not that fun. So you can think about that. You can think about what is really fun for me, what really lights me up in my day. And this could include things like I play in an intramural league and I absolutely love that. And then you can ask yourself, what do I love about that? Do I love the actual sport? Do I love winning? Do I love being around all of my friends? Do I love making new friends? All of those things are different strengths, right? But they could all come from that one activity. So it's really about identifying those things. What do you enjoy doing? What brings you energy? And then asking yourself some more questions of like, what part of that do I like the most? What part of that do I feel like I'm naturally good at? So those are kind of two different ways I would approach that. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I love it. Super helpful to give us different ways of identifying these things in a less structured, other than taking like a formal assessment and things like that. And there are lots of ways we can do it. So those are great. Super helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So feel free to, if you're watching this, feel free to screenshot this and come back to this later. You can obviously just come back to the recording at any point and go through this. And this is an activity I encourage people to do over and over again. Whenever you think of a new strength or you realize you're good at something, come back to this name it, claim it, aim it. How do I maximize it? How do I lean into it a little bit more? How do I spend, and by lean into it, I mean, how do I spend more time doing that thing? And how do I make it easier to do that thing as much as possible? So come back to this as you will. As we were kind of just touching on briefly, discovering your strengths is really step one. And it's exciting and it's empowering, but the real power comes from learning how to apply them and how to improve them over time and maximize them. And so I hope you do that. I hope you do some of these activities. I hope you spend maybe even just the next day or the next week walking through your life looking for the things you're good at rather than looking at all the things you wish you were better at. Believe me, I have so many things I wish I was better at. But one of the most freeing parts of diving into this work over the last several years is that I don't think about them as much anymore. And I don't care about them as much anymore. And I know that they're there, but they're no longer holding me back because I'm able to say, great, I don't have any executing strengths. Guess what? I run my own business. I have to get things done. I now know how to get things done. I now know how my own personal cycle works. I know how my, seasonality, and I know my energy and I know my strengths. And it has lifted such a massive weight off of my shoulders of having to be everything to everyone all the time and to be perfect at it. So we can release a little bit of our perfectionism through looking at what we're good at, through looking at strengths. That's, a huge win in my book. I hope that in this workshop, you've walked away with some discoveries, that you've discovered a little bit about yourself today and that you'll continue to do that moving forward and that you'll start to lean more into your natural talents and abilities and strengths so that you can gain more energy, so that you can do more of whatever it is you want to be doing. You can get more enthusiastic about the things you're doing and have a stronger commitment to your work and the direction that you want your life to go. That's always my goal with strengths. And so I hope that's what everyone is walking away with today. And I will open it up to you, Robin, for any questions you want to ask, anything you want to dive a little deeper into. These are just some ways people can stay in contact with me, but I will stop sharing in just a second.
Oh,
And
perfect. Yeah, leave that up for a second.
yeah.
I was thinking um, that just when you were talking a little bit about your own personal experience and how this has been freeing for you, it just reminded me I had a very similar experience as well myself. I was trying to actually launch my own business for a long time, and I spent like a year and a half trying to think of a name for the business. I was like, dude, that's not really, I'm not really getting it done. And it was really going through my strengths and recognizing that also in my top 10, I do not have a single executor strength in my top 10.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I have so many other great strengths that have allowed me to be really successful. But the decision that I made at that time was I need to not launch something on my own, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
For me, it was not the right thing. And I realized at that moment, I will always have a partner. I will
Yep.
always have somebody else that can be driving. And within Tech Moms, I've talked about this a lot. Like Trina is the executor on our team. Michaela is too, but like Trina's like dive, 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 dive. And I'm like, wait, let's think about it. Let's make some plans. Let's build our relationships, all this other stuff. And Trina's like, go, go, go. And it's
Yeah.
such a great balance. And so that is really freeing. And because it made me feel bad about myself. Like, why
Yep.
can't you get anything done? Why are
Yep.
you so lame that you're just spending a billion hours thinking about what to name this company? Like, duh. And so I loved the idea that the way that it opened it up for me that I could do things differently and recognize that I could still be very successful and make a great impact and accomplish so many things and so many of my own goals, but just doing it in a different way. So let's go ahead and stop sharing. Um, and then I'll just move us to a side by side for a second. Just I like the idea of when do people start having these conversations? Because some of our tech moms, like when would be a time for them to say, "Oh, I want to learn about this." When do people come to you?
People come in all different phases and stages. I will say the most prevalent experience are navigating is burnout and just uncertainty and a career change. Um, Any time where people are just like, I don't get why I'm not living up to my potential, whatever that means. But, I think if you are about to navigate a career change, it can be a great time. You, even if you do the strengths assessment and really do strengths, you're probably not going to use that language in an interview necessarily, but it's a really, if nothing else, Clifton Strengths and strengths coaching is a massive confidence boost. At least that's the experience I've had, the experience all of my clients have had, because it's someone talking to you about all the things that you are naturally good at. And kind of going back to what you were just saying in that idea of balance, and like, you have your Trina, I had my Sarah. But the challenge of that working with a strengths coach actually really helped me with was I viewed Sarah's strengths as far more beneficial and important. And so, yeah, we were a nice triangle, but truly in my mind, I was a useless part of that triangle. And if I were to leave, they would have been just fine. And like, maybe they would have, but not having the executing strengths, right? And so really messed with my head, because we live in a society that is about executing and achievement and goals, and not recognizing that there are a lot of ways to get to do that, to make that happen. So if you are in a work experience where you're like, why am I not good at anything? Why is this so hard? Great time to learn about strengths. Navigating your career change, great time to learn about strengths. Moving into a leadership role, really, really, really good time to learn about your strengths. Um, Building a business, like I would say anytime you're about to embark on something is a great time to start that. But also if you're having challenges with work relationships and understanding, like, why does no one understand me when I talk, and why does this feel so contentious, and things like that, there's almost always some sort of answer in strengths. It's not going to solve all the problems, but having a common language, having just a language in general to be able to talk about the way that you most naturally think, feel, and behave, I think is so beneficial and so motivating, and can really boost the confidence to then get you to take that next step, whatever that is.
Awesome. So if someone wanted to, so back in my day, when did I first do my strengths? It was probably 7, 8 years ago. Like I bought a book, like I bought a
Yeah.
physical book, and it came with a code, and I
Yeah.
took the online test and things like that. Like, is that still a way that if I wanted to take the assessment, is that still the way that it works, or how does it work for someone to take a
Yeah.
strengths assessment?
So I think the book still exists, and I think you can still buy that. They've adjusted the name from Strengths Finder to just Clifton Strengths now. But if you just go to cliftonstrengths.com or just search Clifton Strengths, it'll take you to a page where you can purchase the assessment. Um, when I work with clients, because I'm a coach, I have a discount code. Normally I could give the code, but their system has been down for months now. So I can buy the assessment for a client with the discount. That's a
Mhm.
whole complicated thing. But that aside, you can go to the website, you can purchase the assessment. They have the top five, which just gives you your top five strengths. They have the full 34 report, which is what I always recommend because I love the top 10 strengths personally. And then they have like a strengths for leaders report, a strengths for managers report, a strengths for sales report, maybe a strengths for marketing. I can't remember. Um, I always just recommend the full 34 report, and then you can dive into those other ones later if you want to. Um, and it's about 45 minutes to take the assessment. So do set some time. I always like to warn people the questions are timed. If you don't answer it, it will move on to the next one. And that really freaks people out sometimes. So just like know that going
Yeah.
in. um, but I think the other thing to know is if you have taken the strengths assessment and it's been many, many years, don't feel like you need to retake it. I took mine in 2016. I have not retaken it. Based on their data, people that retake it, your strengths don't really change. They might like kind of switch from number one becomes number three or whatever, but it's very rare that like your number 34 is going to bump into your top 10.
Yeah.
Unless like some very, very major life change, trauma, et cetera, has happened, you don't really need to take the assessment again if that's where someone's at.
Super cool. So, so just as a final takeaway here from this conversation. I just love to hear your advice for someone. We do have a lot of people within our community who are facing major challenges, major transformations, and it can feel really daunting, overwhelming, really, really scary. Um, so I'd love to hear your advice as someone who's coached a lot of people through these kinds of transitions and through these experiences. What kind of inspiration or motivation can you give to people as they're moving forward to know that there are good things ahead and that this journey, this challenging journey, is worth it?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I've been through that as well. I have navigated the certainty, the uncertainty, the quitting with no backup plan. I've done all the things. And one of the core pieces of my work and my business at Whole Human Co. is this belief that like imperfect people change the world. And part of that is really developing your own self trust, your trust in yourself and your abilities, and not confidence, right? Like I love confidence and all of that, but I think it's a topic that's a little bit sometimes over talked about. And I think where confidence comes from is knowing yourself, and trusting that you have what it takes to move forward. So, you know, backing into some of my other work and out of strengths for just a second, the thing I talk to a lot of people about who are navigating transition and navigating unknown and challenge is really thinking about like when have you ever failed? And I mean like failed, lost everything, right? Most of us have not. Some of us have, and if you're here, you've probably built yourself back up from that. And it's really thinking about, yes, we want to think about what's the best case scenario, but also recognizing there is a worst case scenario. And have you ever gotten to that point? You have almost always bounced back. I can almost guarantee that anyone watching this right now has figured it out, has solved the problem as it has come up, has navigated significant challenge, and you've done it every time. And so knowing your strengths is amazing, and building that confidence and building that self-trust is going to make those navigating those challenges easier. Absolutely. But I think just having this reminder of I've always caught myself, and I've always been able to make the best, most aligned next choice, even in the face of significant challenge and even in the face of significant unknown. So that's not advice necessarily, but I've seen it. I've seen it in every client I've worked with. You're so much stronger than you think you are. You're so much more capable, especially if you are a mom, like you know how to navigate the unknown. Everything about being a parent is the unknown forever. Like that's
Mhm.
just it. And so you can do that. And I also really like to encourage people, and I actually just posted a podcast today about this, but to focus on what you have control over. Focus on your inputs. Focus on, I can do this. I can do this. Yes, this is a goal, but I can't make that goal happen. All I can do is do all of the things that can move me toward that goal. So when we're in times of significant uncertainty, particularly when it comes to a career, a job, et cetera, focusing on what you have control over. You have control over building and cultivating your network. You have control over continuing your education. You have control over how you get your work done and how you present yourself. Um, those are things you have control over. You don't have control over the economy. You don't have control over the decisions the leaders in your organization make. So instead of worrying about that, let's focus on what you do have control over and take action in that space. If you know your strengths and can use that in all of this, all the better. But yeah, I would say those are my two pieces of advice.
I love it. I love it. Super helpful. Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. Uh, Follow up with us, everybody who's watching. If you've got questions, I know that Jean would love to hear from you. And I'm always happy to talk to you about your strengths. I'll tell you my strengths: input, learner, woo, includer, and maximizer. So So
Oh.
those are my
Mhm.
top 5. So I've got like Hecka, strategic thinking, Hecka, relationship building, influencing, execution, not even in my top 10, baby.
Nope. And this
So,
is why, Robin, you have so many events that you're doing and you're always at places. And I watch you and I'm like,
uh,
man, that feels so overwhelming to me
oh,
because I have Relator in my top 5,
yeah,
right? I'm like, I'm in the corner talking to one person at the event. And so I love, like, I need you in my
yeah.
life,
I've got
right?
the woo all day long. I can
Yeah.
meet an infinite number of people. So, yeah, I love doing that. Anyway, super fun. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you on our next Better Way Thursday workshop. Thanks, everybody.